For the Pawnee, the moment of death was marked by a rattling sound in the throat. Because of this, they believed the seat of life resided in that part of the body. Another curious belief was that a person would not bleed to death. As a result, some of their doctors insisted that the flow of blood from a wound should never be stopped. As soon as a Pawnee died, the family would break into loud and mournful lamentations. Women in particular were extremely expressive in their grief, crying out at the top of their voices, wringing their hands, beating their breasts, letting their hair fall uncombed over their faces, and covering themselves completely with their robes, along with many other visible signs of sorrow. Burial took place shortly after death. The body was wrapped in a blanket or robe, accompanied by a few trinkets and sometimes a valued item, such as a bow or tomahawk. Women carried the body to the grave, followed by friends and relatives, weeping and wailing. Sticks or stones, when available, were piled on the grave to prevent wolves from digging up the body. I never knew them to place bodies above ground, as is the custom among some other tribes. A post, often painted with symbolic designs, was usually erected at the grave. Women, particularly widows or mothers, often remained in mourning at the graveside for days at a time. While traveling, some even risked their lives by lingering behind to grieve at a relative's resting place, exposing themselves to danger from prowling enemies. Men, by contrast, expressed their sorrow more quietly, usually by sitting in silence and covering their heads with their robes. The symbol of supernatural, one might even say divine presence among the Pawnee, was the sacred medicine bundle. To them, it held a significance similar to the concept of the Shekinah. Each band possessed one, and they were kept under the care of the medicine men. These bundles accompanied the band on all major journeys and were treated with the utmost reverence. They were only opened on occasions of great importance, and doing so involved elaborate ceremony. The contents of the Kauai medicine bundle included a specially decorated buffalo robe, pelts of several fur-bearing animals such as beaver, mink, and otter, the skull of a wildcat, stuffed skins of the sparrowhawk Falco sparvarius, and the swallow-tailed flycatcher Milvulus forficatus, several bundles of scalps and broken arrows taken from enemies, a small bundle of Pawnee arrows, some ears of corn, and a few clumps of buffalo hair, such as those found in wallows where the animals rolled during molting. The presence of the buffalo robe made sense. Buffalo were, quite literally, their lifeblood. The furs, skull, and tufts of hair likely held symbolic meanings, now lost even to the Pawnee themselves. The sparrowhawk represented bravery, while the swallow-tailed flycatcher was considered sacred, perhaps because of its unusual appearance and rarity in Pawnee lands. The scalps and arrows were trophies of warfare, while the corn reflected their agricultural life. A favorite pastime for both sexes was storytelling. A man with a vivid imagination and a fluent tongue could hold an audience quiet and attentive through a long winter evening. Stories and songs made up their form of literature. Many of the stories were traditional, concerning the tribe or notable individuals within it, while others were mythological or resembled the animal tales found in German folklore. These tales were told and retold until, in time, most of the tribe likely believed them as literal history. Closely related to this love of storytelling was their fondness for debate. They were deeply interested in discussing abstract ideas or general principles, often showing considerable skill in maintaining their arguments. Their most formal expressions of this skill were reserved for public occasions, such as councils. One could not attend a tribal council on a matter of importance without being struck by the power and force of their natural eloquence. To be known as an orator was highly desirable, and once a man had earned that reputation, he wielded great influence. A true orator, speaking at a council on a matter he cared deeply about, fully understood the gravity of his role. He identified with his cause, addressed his opponent directly, and his speech could take on a strikingly dramatic quality. Each lodge also contained a bundle of sacred items, occupying a place in the Pawnee household comparable to the penates of ancient Rome. This bundle was suspended from the roof framework directly opposite the entrance, beneath which was the seat of honor. Acts of recognition and reverence were regularly paid to it. Great care was taken to avoid offending the spirit associated with it. No stranger could touch it. A knife could not be driven into the lodge floor in its presence, and many other superstitious prohibitions surrounded it. I have seen only 2 such bundles opened. The principal item in one was a skull said to be that of a famous enemy, killed long ago by an ancestor of the family. It had been worn smooth from years of handling and was clearly very old. In the other bundle, the most striking item was a curiously marked flint nodule, about the size of a goose egg. One particularly grim religious rite, once practiced only by one band of the tribe, the Skeety, stood out in dark prominence: the human sacrifice of captives. This was not done in revenge, but as a sacred offering. The origin of this terrible custom was unknown even to the Pawnee themselves, and I believe it to have been an anomaly within their broader religious system. The practice was limited to the Skeety band and appears to have been deeply rooted. The offering was made to the morning star, Opirikut, which the Skeety especially regarded with fearful reverence. The sacrifice occurred around corn planting time and was meant to appease the star, to ensure a successful crop. Some have mistakenly believed the morning star was a god of agriculture, but the Skeety feared it more than revered it, believing it brought misfortune if not appeased. It has also been wrongly claimed that the sacrifice occurred annually. In truth, it only took place when certain events were interpreted as requiring it. The victim was usually a young woman captured from an enemy tribe. The more beautiful she was, the more acceptable the offering. Once the Skeety Council had decided to proceed, the chosen captive was placed in the care of medicine men months ahead of time. She was treated kindly and fed well to ensure she grew plump. She was kept completely unaware of her fate. She was made to eat alone, since by the law of hospitality, sharing food would make her that person's guest, and he would then be honor-bound to protect her. On the morning of the appointed day, she was led from lodge to lodge throughout the village, begging for wood and paint, unaware that these items were for her own sacrifice. Whenever someone gave her a stick of wood or a portion of red or black paint, the attending doctors took it and sent it to the site prepared for the ceremony. Once a sufficient quantity had been collected, the ritual began with a solemn gathering of the medicine men. They smoked the great medicine pipe, displayed the contents of the sacred bundle, danced, prayed, and performed other rites at different stages of the proceedings. A wooden framework was constructed, 2 upright posts about 4.5 feet apart, with 2 horizontal crosspieces, fixed at heights of 2 and 7 feet. A slow-burning fire was built between the posts. At nightfall, the victim was stripped of her clothing. One half of her body was painted black, the other red. She was then fastened with leather thongs, her right wrist and ankle to one post, her left wrist and ankle to the other. A group of boys had surrounded her, each with a small bow and a bundle of stalks from the tall joint grass, Tripsacum dactyloids. They began shooting the sharpened joints as arrows into her body. The shafts pierced her skin and the underlying fat, where they remained lodged. The oily matter began to ooze out, trickling from the embedded shafts into the fire below. Sometimes these exposed ends caught fire and burned like small torches from the body of the suffering victim. After this horrifying spectacle had gone on for some time, an old man appointed in advance fired an arrow into her heart, ending her suffering. The doctors then cut open the chest, removed the heart, and burned it. The rising smoke was believed to possess powerful spiritual properties, and weapons, hunting tools, and agricultural implements were passed through it to bring success in their use. The flesh was cut from the body and either buried in cornfields, thrown to the dogs, or disposed of according to custom or whim. The skeleton was left in place until, loosened by decay, it collapsed to the ground. The last known instance of this sacrificial ritual took place in April 1838. It is possible it occurred once or twice more after that, but no further cases are confirmed. The previous winter, the Skeety, shortly after beginning their seasonal hunt, had a victorious battle with a band of Dakotas. They killed several men and captured more than 20 women and children. Fearing retaliation by a much larger Dakota force, the Skeety quickly returned to their village for safety. Food was scarce. Their ponies died from lack of forage, and most disastrously, one of the captives carried smallpox. The disease spread rapidly through the Skeety and eventually reached the rest of the Pawnee. These accumulated hardships were blamed on the wrath of the morning star. Despite a prior agreement, made just 2 years earlier, that the sacrifice would never occur again, the Skeety resolved to repeat the rite in hopes of restoring favor. Each lodge also held a sacred bundle, regarded with the same reverence as the penates of ancient Rome. The bundle was suspended from the roof beams directly opposite the entrance, with the seat of honor placed beneath it. Certain acts of devotion were performed regularly in its presence. Great care was taken not to offend the spirit it represented. No stranger was allowed to touch it. No one could thrust a knife into the floor in its presence, and many other taboos surrounded it. I have seen only 2 of these bundles opened. The central object in one was a skull, said to belong to a long-dead enemy, slain by an ancestor. It had been smoothed by years of handling, and clearly was of considerable age. The other bundle's most notable item was a flinty, oddly marked nodule about the size of a goose egg. The subject of the afterlife was one the Pawnee avoided. Any conversation involving death or its implications was typically met with silence. A major turning point in Pawnee history was the arrival of white settlers. This event caused great upheaval and remains vivid in tribal memory. The Pawnee claim that while many tribes met the newcomers with hostility, or at best, wary formality, they welcomed them as friends from the very beginning. They have remained friendly ever since, though this alliance earned them the lasting animosity of their more powerful neighbors. This claim is for the most part accurate. The Pawnee never took part in the frequent Indian uprisings against white settlers, and were therefore looked upon with suspicion or disdain by other tribes. John B. Dunbar,